As you've read in the ground school material, the procedures we'll follow today are similar to real-world airline flying, but I've simplified them a lot for the purpose of teaching you the basics of flying jets. Let's hop to it and get the airplane ready for takeoff. We'll begin by running through an abbreviated checklist. Set takeoff flaps to 5 by pressing F7 3 times. Set auto brakes to RTO. No, I mean the jet's auto brakes, not the brakes in your car. Turn the landing light on by clicking the landing light switch. Okay, you would have got that one without me. Okay, I think we're ready for takeoff. But first, you have to remove your hands from over your eyes. Yes, that's better. Before we pour on the coals, let's quickly run through the takeoff procedure. You're going to move the throttles forward and increase the power to 40% N1 with the brakes set. Then, you'll release the brakes, set takeoff power to 95% N1, cross-check that both of your airspeed indicators are alive and engine gauges are in the green at 80 knots. Look for V1 at 150 knots. Rotate at 154 knots. Pitch up at 3 degrees per second until you reach 20 degrees nose-up attitude. Look for V2 at 162 knots. Check for positive rate of climb, then raise the landing gear. That's a lot to do in a short amount of time. This is one reason we have co-pilots. Wanting a cup of coffee is another reason we have co-pilots too. At about 1,000 feet above ground level, we'll start retracting the flaps, set climb power for 90% N1, and lower the nose to 15 degrees nose-up pitch. You'll maintain 200 knots until 3,000 feet above ground level, and then lower the nose to about 10 degrees nose-up pitch. After you reach 200 knots, retract the flaps completely, accelerate to 250 knots, and set auto brakes to off. You'll then be in a stable climb at 250 knots. Got all that? Don't worry, I'll be your co-pilot and help you along the way. But you'll have to get your own coffee. Things are going to happen fast between now and getting into a stabilized climb. If you get behind too much, feel free to press escape and restart the lesson. This is the electronic version of putting your hands back over your eyes. Here we go. You're clear for takeoff, so fly straight out, climb and maintain 12,000 feet. Advance the throttles to 40% N1. It takes very little throttle to hit 40%. Release the brakes and track the runway centerline. Now set power for 95% N1. There's 80 knots. Cross-check your 2 airspeed indicators and engine gauges. There's 150. Now 154. Rotate. Slowly bring the nose up to 20 degrees, pitch up attitude. Good. You've accelerated through 162, which is V2. You have a positive rate of climb, so press G to raise the gear. Continue climbing. We're at 1,000 feet AGL, so press F6 twice to retract flaps to 1. Now set climb power to 90% N1 and change your nose-up pitch angle to 15 degrees. Now maintain 200 knots by adjusting your pitch. You've just passed through 3,000 feet, so lower your nose to 10 degrees nose-up pitch. It's time to retract the flaps completely. Press F6 once more. With your gear up, it's time to set auto brakes to off. Adjust your pitch to maintain 250 knots in a stable climb to 10,000 feet. Things are a little less frantic now. Use your trim to keep everything stable. Slow down. Slow down. Leveling off at 12,000 feet means we will start our preparation around 10,000 feet. You'll continue to decrease your pitch and accelerate to cruise speed. Then we'll practice some turns. Since that's not going well, I'm going to end this lesson now. I'd like to suggest that you take this lesson again so we can practice these important piloting skills some more. They say that everything that goes up must come down. In this lesson, you'll learn how to descend a Boeing 737 so you arrive at a specific location and altitude simultaneously. This is very important if you want to get an airplane designed for fast flying to slow down and descend to the spot from which you start your approach into the airport. Before I turn control over to you, I want to confirm that you've read the ground school material for this lesson. I'm relying on you to understand some important calculations and concepts in order to make this work. If you want to start over, press escape. Otherwise, the airplane is all yours. As mentioned in the briefing, you can hand fly this lesson or use the autopilot. In either case, you need to be proficient at controlling the airplane or proficient at using the autopilot. Either way, you're the pilot in command from here on out. Here's what we'll do in this lesson. We're tracking outbound from the Spokane VOR. When we reach Whitrow intersection, you'll slow the plane to 250 knots. At Swak intersection, you'll be able to pick up Payne VOR. You'll track inbound on the 255 degree course and begin your descent to cross Payne VOR precisely at 8,000 feet. We'll monitor the descent and make adjustments so you cross the VOR as instructed. At that point, you'll make a turn toward the east and then intercept and fly the SeaTac runway 16 left ILS approach. Whitro or 103 DME from Spokane. So slow the airplane to 250 knots while maintaining flight level 280. Try reducing the power to about 35% N1 and use trim to make maintaining your altitude easier. Readjust your power as needed once you're at 250 knots. As we fly toward our descent point, you want to calculate our descent rate to start us toward crossing Payne VOR at 8,000 feet. As I mentioned in the ground school, we'll use the 3-to-1 rule, where we'll fly 3 miles for every 1,000 feet we descend. So we subtract 8,000 from 28,000 and drop the last 3 digits. That's 20. Multiply by 3, and that tells us to start our descent at 60 DME from Payne. And because we're at 28,000 feet, I guess we can call this higher math. As for our descent rate, we'll multiply our ground speed by 6. So we take our approximate ground speed of 375 knots, multiply by 6 to get 2,250. So our 2 key numbers are to start descending at 60 DME and at a rate of 2,250 feet per minute. Before we begin our descent, we also want to set up our radios. Press Shift 2 to bring up the radio stack. We'll tune 3 stations. Change nav 1 to 110.6. Change nav 1 standby to 110.3. Change nav 2 to 115.5. Press Shift 2 again. Our descent point will start at about 130 DME from Spokane. We've changed Spokane VOR to nav 2, so watch the DME in the RMI and continue flying your current heading. Speed up. Anticipate receiving Payne VOR in a few miles, so closely watch the HSI for station reception. You want to start your descent at 60 DME, which is also 130 DME from Spokane. So you need to move fast when you receive the VOR. There's 60 DME, so start your descent to 8,000 feet at about 2,250 feet per minute. You may need to reduce power a bit to keep the airplane at an indicated airspeed of 250 knots. I'd suggest setting the power to about 35% N1. Also, start tracking inbound on the 255-degree course to Payne. Our goal from here is to cross over the VOR right at 8,000 feet. As we descend, your main job, beside flying the airplane of course, is to anticipate where you need to be when you pass through each flight level. So our next goal is to pass through flight level 260 at about 54 DME. Okay, there's 26,000. You appear to be on a good descent profile. As we approach flight level 250, let's do some mental math to monitor our progress. We'll be at 25,000 feet, and we're going to 8,000. So 25 minus 8 is 17. Times 3 is 51. So we can check for 51 DME as we pass through flight level 250. Try to be within 1 mile of your target at each check. How are you doing? Okay, there's 25,000. You appear to be on a good descent profile. As we pass through each 2,000-foot block, I'll monitor your progress and offer some suggestions for adjusting your descent. Okay, there's 24,000. You appear to be on a good descent profile. As we approach flight level 230, let's do some more mental math to monitor our progress. We'll be at 23,000 and we're going to 8,000. So 23 minus 8 is 15. Times 3 is 45. So we'll check for 45 DME as we pass through flight level 230. Since that's not going well, I'm going to end this lesson now. I'd like to suggest that you take this lesson again so we can practice these important piloting skills some more. In this lesson, you'll use the skills you've learned so far in the ATP lessons and then learn how to fly a full ILS approach in this 737. We'll fly the same ILS approach you flew in the instrument lessons, which is the ILS runway 13 right approach into Seattle's Boeing field. This way you can see how much different it is to fly approaches in smaller and bigger aircraft. You're approaching Olympia VOR. Your job is to cross the Seattle VOR at 6,000 feet. So between here and there, I'm going to let you show me what you've learned so far. I'll keep tabs on your progress and tell you to do a few things, but mostly I want you to get us to the Seattle VOR so we can start the ILS lesson. You've got a little time before we cross the Olympia VOR, so plan your descent. Okay, your clearance is to cross Olympia VOR at flight level 180. Then proceed to the Seattle VOR via the inbound 022 degree course. Do not exceed 250 knots. Cross Seattle VOR at 6,000 feet. Then proceed to the NOLA outer marker on the 323 degree course from the Seattle VOR. Okay, Captain. You have control of the aircraft. Take us to the Olympia VOR and then the Seattle VOR. Turn left more. There's the Olympia VOR. Track to the Seattle VOR as instructed in your clearance. I'd suggest getting your radio set up before your descent as described in the briefing. Since that's not going well, I'm going to end this lesson now. I'd like to suggest that you take this lesson again so we can practice these important piloting skills some more.